He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Hi and welcome to Eating Fried Chicken in the Shower Special Edition. Hashtag not even in the shower, bro. This episode, we're looking at Māori and mental health with me, your Pākehā host, James Nokise. So as always, make sure you're in a safe place with your comfort food and join us, eating fried chicken, not even in the shower.
Kia ora tātou, tātou kua tai mai ki tēnei whare, ki te whakatatuki i tā tātou kaupapa i tēnei ahi. Me pēnei pēr te whakate wairua i a tātou, i tēnei wā, tūtaua mai runga, tūtaua mai raro, tūtaua mai roto, tūtaua mai waho. Kia tau ai te Māori tū, te Māori ora, ki tēnā o tātou, ki puta ai tātou, ki te whai iau, ki te ao marama. Haumi e, hui e, tai ki e. Kia ora e hoa mā.
Kia ora, Scotty. Hi to our listeners and to people who are watching this clip going, this is not a shower. Welcome to Eating Fried Chicken in the Shower, very special edition. Special for a few reasons. One, there is 6 of us. We are looking at Māori mental health today, and so I've invited some friends to come around. I'll start with, we have Stacey Morrison here, who is asked to be announced as the mother of dragons of this particular meeting, but you might know as a broadcaster. We have Logan Hamley, who has been asked to be referenced as an eternal student study. We have Scotty Cotter, who's just walked in off the street, but also an amazing theatre maker with massive company. We have Scotty Morrison, but for to stop confusion on the two Scotties, how am I going to be talking to you today, Scotty?
Use my Māori name, Te Manaho.
Te Manaho. And can I ask what that translates to, brother?
Literally, it's kind of to have a cheerful disposition or to be quite happy and jovial most of the time.
See, that's you shouldn't be in this. You're useless for this. We want Pody.
Yes, well, hopefully we can look for the manaho tanga in this today.
Oh, kia ora te manaho. Because my Samoan name is Fele, which just translates to Fred. It's incredibly, not like even cheerful Fred or spiritual Fred or chicken Fred, just Fred. And finally, we have, Courtney, I've forgotten your last name.
Dawson.
Now, what does that translate to?
Generic.
Generic Caucasian name. Kia ora, and kia ora to colonisation. Courtney Dawson, comedian and 2019 Royal Comedy winner.
Good.
Now, welcome in here. The reason that we are not in the shower is twofold. One, I don't know if any of you guys, when the last time you had a shower with 6 people that aren't your relatives, but it can be a little bit difficult. But also, I guess, food in a place where you wash wouldn't be good tikanga, would it, Stacey?
Oh, yeah. So actually, when we first talked about that, we're like, about that. And I see that's your safe place and that's your happy place. And I'm all about the fried chicken, but yeah, in terms of Māori or tikanga Māori, eating in a place where we wash our bodies, it's just, keeping things separate in terms of tapu and in terms of the body. And so when we talked about that, I thought, what do I do here? I don't want to bum you out, but is it an opportunity to share and say, I totally respect that that's your thing, but it gave me a feeling in my puku, to see it. But I know that other people feel okay about that. So is it bringing out feelings for you, Scotty?
No, this is like, the chicken would be yuck too.
So many questions. I think all through season 1, people were feeding back, going, but bro, how does the chicken not get it? And I just want to say, I appreciate you guys being open, because I always say I think it's something we haven't talked about. I have multiple safe spaces. One of them is in the shower. That's, as you say, a very personal thing for me, manipulating how the chicken works in the shower. And the other, of course, is with whānau, with my ainga, whether it's in the garage, as the young people will do when you're coming up, in the table, or in the kitchen. So I came back to you guys, were like, all right, well, garage or kitchen, what feels safer? And you were like, we'll get a kitchen environment going on. And we've managed to, we're down here at Pākehā and Pākehā, which has a very garage kitchen vibe. With deep respect, I say that to the chef who's within earshot, with this incredible food. Did it speak to anyone else? Can I just ask about, in terms of tikanga and in terms of feeling uncomfortable eating in that?
Yeah. I have the same understanding, but it's interesting because my understanding of tikanga and eating food and tapu comes from my mother, who's Pākehā.
Right.
Yeah, and a lot of that is because she raised me and my brothers and sisters through the placenta philosophy, and they have a really strong understanding of tying and childcare with tikanga Māori, and so whereas my father was quite disenfranchised from being Māori, my mother was often the one who taught us.
Well, that's interesting, Courtney, because I think my parents had a similar relationship with Wha'a Samoa.
Yeah.
My dad was a bit laissez-faire. You know, we'll send him to a high school where they teach it and he can take it as a subject. Whereas both my mother and my stepmother were like, he's got to learn the stuff.
Yeah.
He's already going to be the palest Samoan in the family.
No, our Pākehā mums were our bastions as well. You know, they looked after us too in that way. Pēhā whakaro, and what would you think if... How did you react when I said, so there's fried chicken?
Yeah, same. It was kind of a little bit abhorrent, actually.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's a whole range of tikanga around Kai. And a lot of the tikanga that we have around Kai is all set down in our traditional narratives, which unfortunately, due to colonisation, are not commonly known. It's not common knowledge these days about where all of this tikanga around Kai comes from. And if you delve deep enough and you're connected with the right people who will tell you about, you know, where the origins of food come from and all of the different protocols that we have around food, that's where you get the knowledge around it, and that's where you understand it better as to why food is viewed the way it is and respected the way it is and treated with, you know, with caution.
Yep.
Around a lot of different areas. And
Our 6-year-old, she
Context.
polices it. Like if we're in the movie toilet, she goes, "Mama," and she'll be speaking Māori. She's going, "Ew, why are they bringing their drink in here?" And I was going,
the movies, you know, you walk in the movies, and you've got your drink and your popcorn, and you think, "I'll just go to the toilet first and walk to the toilet." Like we'll leave our food outside the door. If it gets swiped, so be it. But we'd rather it got taken rather than us compromise ourselves by walking in and taking our food into the restrooms.
It's interesting. I feel like that's more an example of how much people just accept the unhygienicness of movie theatre food.
That's where a lot of the tikanga does come from. It's just general hygiene, really.
Yeah.
"Don't put your asses with your glasses," I think.
Hey, there you go. That's the title of the show.
That proverb come from it.
That's a Pākehā proverb.
With that in mind, shall we also observe tikanga, and so we can get into this incredible fried chicken here.
Yeah.
Okay, no mai e ngā hua, papa hure warangi nui ke te kai, whi tiki ki ora haumi e hui e,
Tākia.
Mauri ora, kia pai te kai.
Now, while you guys dig in, I've written down the menu here because, listeners, let me tell you, we have watercress salad, and that is almost the end of the greenery.
With harakeke seeds.
Harakeke seeds. We have chicken sandwich with pickled kamo. Oh, there's a black garlic and manuka, and then rewana bread. We have fried cauliflower with hotipiku kaura rub. And then we have honey cooked kumara bites. And we have a lot of it.
And there's no best foods.
And there's no best foods mayo.
There's pickled kamo.
Man, it's good.
Because did everyone here grow up with a strong sense of culture?
No, not at all.
Yeah?
No. Pākehā on my mum's side, Māori on my dad's side, and my dad and my mum separated when I was 5, and we moved in with my mum's family, with my nan and granddads, and no connection until I got to university, really.
Well, how did that reconnection start? Could I ask?
I took Māori 130. Shout out to University of Auckland Māori 130. I just really vibed with it, and I thought, this is something I really want to do. And my boyfriend at the time, he was taking reo papers at AUT, and I was like, I can't have this white guy know more Māori than I do. This is shameful. And so I started taking them at AUT as well, and now I'm up to the stage 3 papers.
Oh, wow.
So, slow journey, but getting there.
Is it, you say that with a smile. Like, is it been a joyful journey?
I mean, parts of it, I think reconnection is tough, but I've learnt languages before. I've done like French and Spanish and a whole bunch of colonial languages, because that's what you teach you at school. But yeah, when it's a language that you feel like you should know, I think it becomes a little bit harder. But I think there are kind of periods of you have like key breakthroughs, and like I'm up to the second breakthrough where you can understand what people are saying, and it's a little bit harder to respond. But like that's when you feel real cool. Like, I know what's going on.
Kei te marama.
Yeah, ai, tika. But I'm just slow to respond. So that's the thing that I'm working on now.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about in terms of language trauma is
Totally.
really interesting because it like manifests in so many different ways of feeling whakamā, of feeling part of something but then you can't express it, and then the trauma that is sometimes not even just only yours but your whole whānau, and the loss and the mamae and all the, I guess the embarrassment and the pain that we can't express, like our true selves. So I did the same. I learnt Japanese first.
Yeah.
And that was easy. I was like, blah, blah, blah. No worries at all. But with Māori, it's like painful. It's like ripping scars. And if people are going, are they going to talk about mental health? Well, actually, it's so connected in terms of how connected you feel to yourself and how you define yourself and your Māori self and how we express that.
And how we think. I think people we take for granted sometimes that the language that we use is how we think in and of ourselves and to ourselves. The way we talk to ourselves is in the languages that we know. So if you have a disconnection to your language, so that when you say linguistic trauma, I think that's the first time we've heard that term on this whole podcast.
Oh yeah, don't worry. When Scotty first said it on TV, people were like, "Oh, that's a new one." But then, people don't know. This is what happens when you beat children and say you will not speak this language, and you actively work to colonise a language and to minimise its value.
Yeah, that's definitely the story that happened in my family. My grandfather is from up north, and he came down, didn't speak the language, and the big message that he gave my dad growing up was, if you want to succeed in the world, you better act like a Pākehā. And my dad really took that on. And my dad is super successful, and he sort of just left that part of him behind. And he did have parts in his life where he tried to reconnect, and that's his journey that he's on. But yeah, that feeling of it's something that I should already know is can be really shameful, and especially like during school, like looking Māori and being very proud of being Māori, but not having that connection can be devastating. And I remember we went to a performance that was put on by a Māori theatre company, and then at the end they all did a waiata and did koha and stuff, and everyone, because I went to school in Ponsonby, all of my classmates looked at me like, "Oh, what do we do?" And I was like, wanted to just melt into the ground. So I had no idea what to do, and it was so shameful. And that shame didn't come from other Māori people. It came from those situations a lot of the time.
But we can feel our tupuna with us in their pain, and even if we don't have the words for it, or we don't have the means to express it, we feel it, and I think it's really dangerous. It's part of our disconnect and part of when our people get into trouble. It's because we know that's us. And then, especially as men, I think, the spirituality of Māori men, we are very spiritual people. And so I guess I talk about spiritual side of mental health in that way more than I would talk about mental health, but how your wairua is feeling is much more how I perceive mental health in a Māori framework of thinking. But then for Māori men not to have a way to express their spirituality, I just see it as a real block and vulnerability.
There's a lot of theatre, Scotty, that I find in Māori and Pacific, especially in the younger practitioners, because we often joke that you write your first play about your family, because that's the only way you know how to talk to them.
This is my therapy.
Tell me more. What was your first play?
I still tell my parents a lot about my social life by giving them free tickets to opening night. That's it. Have you found that, like, as a theatre practitioner, like how have you found that those discussions have opened up over the years?
Well, you really have to dive into the work, and then that's where you start finding everything. And it's a really inflective way of therapy, because you are actually writing stuff and putting it up and performing it, and your body goes through all those emotions, and then your brain kicks in and goes, oh, that's what's happening. So it's a different way of reconnecting everything back up.
So, Te Manao, you're a teacher of language. What's your experience been in terms of like seeing the language grow, but also being there at the front line of the reconnection of people in language?
And your Jedi training.
And your Jedi.
It's encouraging, actually. It's very encouraging, especially the last 3 or so years. There's been a big attitudinal shift in terms of, and I'm talking about wider community, wider New Zealand community, towards the value of Māori language. And if people's attitudes are better towards Māori language, then they see value in it, that gives it status, and that's a big part of revitalisation of our language. Those two key things, the status and the attitude towards it. So, but in terms of, I mean, you see the language trauma on a daily basis when you're teaching, when you're at the forefront and you're teaching people, because there's a big difference between the Māori students and the non-Māori students. The non-Māori students, they just go, whereas the Māori students tend to have a lot of, for want of a better word, a lot of baggage and a lot that they need to deal with on an emotional level before they can clear pathways for them to start to learn. And, things like whakamā is a big one. That inherent feeling that a lot of them have that we should know this language, and deep down inside I should know this, but I don't know this, and that's like that can be quite a big challenge for them to get past that and start to learn, because they see other people in the classroom who don't have that issue to deal with, and they just charge forward, whereas they're trying to deal with all this emotional stuff before they can actually learn. So you see that on a daily basis, and you see the Māori students struggling because the other ones are excelling and they're not, but it's their language. And so, but in saying that, at the same time, when they do start to progress and when they do start to find, we look for a lot of different avenues to break down barriers and make it better for them, so that they can start to progress as well. But when they progress and when they get it, you start to see the transformative powers that the language has for people. And that can be, it's usually on a spiritual and emotional level, but it can be on a physical level as well, because language these days, especially Māori language, it's valued more, so it starts to open up doorways and pathways for people into employment.
I want to pick up on two things you mentioned there. I'm going to come to spirituality and the way tie it into mental health, but I also want to pick up on that word value. I think when we think about mental health, we often think about people whose sense of self-value is either starts at a low place or due to environment or circumstances decreases to a low place. How do each of you see, in terms when we talk about linguistic trauma, and which are all just about culture and value, how do you guys see it affecting people when what you feel is of value to you is not necessarily seen as of value to society?
Good point. That's a good point, because and that's the thing, because Māori have been in that position for so long that it's a generational thing for us to deal with now, and so it's and everybody's sort of different in how they need to be approach the trauma that they have, and how they're gonna deal with it and mitigate it and try and move forward with it. So, but a typical thing, especially the language. I mean, we've been fighting for so long for the language to be valued, and it's only just starting to happen now. I mean, when you get negativity around your own language, and then you get your negative portrayals in media and things like that, you get negative statistics always thrown at you. There's never anything positive that's promoted. You're Māori if you've done something wrong, whereas you're New Zealander if you've done something right. All of those kind of things. All, the combination of all of that kind of propaganda, I suppose. Is it propaganda the right word?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It does have an impact on people, and then you get people turning around now going, why are Māori so messed up? Why are they at the top of all the mental health statistics? Yeah. And it's a big plethora of things. It's a big problem, and it's been happening for a long time, and that's why we're in the position we're in.
And
There's
that thing
poverty,
too,
all of those kind
when
of
you're
things,
constantly bombarded by those images and stuff, if that's the only vision that you see yourself as, you're just going to rise to that instead of going, I can be something else.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
Oh, chicken on the ground?
cauliflower.
Cauliflower. Oh,
Yeah, that's
cauliflower.
right.
So,
Cauliflower down. But it's like what Courtney was saying. I mean, that's the story for my whānau as well, is go, oh, well, even though you are Māori, you might do okay anyway. You know, that it's kind of like be successful or be Māori. And so it's about how we value ourselves, but also how our values are valued. Because if we are meant to be spiritual people, we're meant to be collective people who think of wider, something that's bigger than us. Our culture is bigger than us. We're connected to other people, our hapu, our iwi, our whānau. And yet we're in a society where the individual wins and the individual's success is celebrated. Then there's all those things that don't fit and don't match, and you don't feel like you are right. You know, yet again, I don't quite fit this bill. So those are the things that impact how our self-image and our self-worth is built to go. So if I'm going to be, if I'm a clever person, then I can be that clever Māori and I can build my self-esteem around that. But if I'm a disconnected Māori who actually doesn't even like the fact that I'm Māori, then I'm just in this constant battle of trying not to be who I am, who I can't actually change.
But sometimes Māori are their own worst enemies too, because we've been so indoctrinated to thinking that we are at this level and don't go any higher, that when someone does go higher, Māori will turn on them.
right.
And so who do you think you are? You know, all that kind of stuff, you know, being up there, being a flash, whatever, lawyer, doctor, or whatever.
You're allowed to be a sports person, you're allowed to be funny, all those things, but just don't get too up yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, of course, we're second behind Māori when it comes to those wonderful statistics. Quite a big gap, though. Quite a big gap. Because there was, you said something, and I went, ha, I relate. And all the rest of you went, like, oh. But, Courtney, have you found that, like, in growing up, the disconnection?
Yeah, it was funny when you were just saying about how when you come into, because I took a Māori language course through Te Wānanga, and that feeling of all that baggage and like a little bit of resentment of all the Pākehā and Chinese students who were just
Smashing it.
and just going hard, and also the fact that like I was a 30-year-old going back into a study situation was also like, oh, that was anxiety on top of that. But how, even though I didn't continue into the second year, and I hope to at some point, that learning actually dislodged something in me, and I don't know, made it easier for me to accept myself a little bit more. It made me think seriously about my career path and following my passions and stuff. And I don't actually think that if I hadn't done that course, I don't think I would have tried comedy 6 months ago, and I wouldn't have. And connecting with people from my family and learning about the history of old tradition, telling stories, especially from Ngāti Kurī, and listening and learning to all these stories and being like, oh, that is actually me. Even though I haven't grown up with reo in the home, I did struggle with some sort of being stuck in the middle in a lot of parts of it. It means that, like, even though I didn't grow up with it, I can't really get away from it.
I mean, the thing around identity rejection is massive, especially among urban Māori. I think it's a huge thing, is that they talk about in psychology this like single standard story around Māori, and it is those negative representations, that depiction of Māori as, you know, lower class, violent, abusive, and when you don't have that representation around you that you kind of get on the marae and like extended whānau that kind of demonstrates that actually we're not like this, you can kind of just, you drink the Kool-Aid, you're like, oh yeah, that's who we are. And so, like, especially at school, it can be really toxic, because you can be Māori or you can be smart, but like the idea is that you can't be both. It's not attributed to being Māori. And yeah, that can kind of, you have to like unpack that. I think it takes time to kind of do that.
And talking about value, it's like how he was in the top stream of high school, so he was offered French and German, and it wasn't until if you were in the bottom stream you were offered Māori. So those kind of things about value. And I'd have people say to me, "You're actually quite bright," and I'm like, "Why are they saying actually? Why?
You've done well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually,
Not bad for a Māori.
Yeah.
I'm native, but That's also what I say to rangatahi when they come in and they come to this flash media building, and I say, I just need you to know that you belong here. This place, you belong in this place. People who look like us, who think like us, who are like us, we belong here. That's all I need you to know. And the transformativeness that Scotty talked about. I mean, basically, you talked about how, funnily enough, that it unlocked your comedian life. I think we wouldn't be married if we hadn't followed our path in terms of the reo. Transformed him. He was a total shit. It's true.
Might have been.
Scotty, you working in theatre, which I think New Zealand's history of theatre is very much a European model. Have you found the same thing with what Stacey's saying about like making sure when people come in, they know that they're meant to be there?
Yeah. I'm lucky that I'm friends with a lot of established Māori actors and creators. So the door has always been open for me. They've just gone, come in. And now that door's still open for young Māori to come in too. And they just bloom. So there's no shortage in us performing and telling our own stories. It's just getting them to the right places. It's hard getting the Māori crowd in there. But once you do, it's like, come back and see another show.
Yeah, you need to set it up as a garage party. So come to the garage party.
There is a garage party one. It's called
Party with the Aunties.
Party with the Aunties.
Party with the Aunties.
Kura, Matariki,
Edina.
Jamie McCaskill and Edina.
Yeah, and Edina built that for, for the peeps.
Yeah, but it's in our traditions.
Yeah, performances are always
Yeah.
part of the culture. And even, when Scotty talks about acting and how you sort of move out of yourself and become this other character for a little while until the, end of the show, then you go back into your normal self. I mean, that's what we do when we haka. When we haka, you transform. When during a haka, you're out there and you become this totally different beast. And then when the haka is finished, you're back into your normal self. When you get up to perform oratory on a marae, you move to a different space, and you become the orator, and it's all part of your performance, what you're doing on the marae, and then you transform back into how you were before once you finish your speech. So, all of those kind of things. But the key to all of those, and this is why I think that there is a little bit of, why there's a lot of issues with the Māori mind and Māori mental health, is because a lot of our people don't know how to transform back once they've gone into a different space and into a different sort of zone or position of wairua. Then they don't know how to transform back, and it's a bit of a knowledge thing that's been lost over the years through legislation, but also colonisation, and it's our ability to karakia. It's our ability to taku, and it's our ability to be able to connect with our deities and make sure that when we come back from these other different spaces that we've been in, these other characters that we've been in, to transform back to taku to our atua, to make sure that we become culturally safe, spiritually safe. And to me, that's part of the reason why we have a bit of an issue with mental health, because most of our people don't know how to taku and don't know how to connect spiritually.
I think that's why whakamomori is so high.
Yeah.
Because they get stuck in those other zones.
They get stuck in zones, they get stuck in between, and then we call it whakawhenua. It's kind of like bringing yourself back to terra firma, back to land base.
Yeah, right.
So that if you sort of move into different realms and you go into different areas in a spiritual sense, but also your physical self moves, but then it's really your spirit that moves. When you go into position to another character, you're still in your body, but your whole ahua, and your whole wairua changes to become that other person that you need to transform back.
I want to do a...
need to write another book.
There's not many. I mean, Stacey's talking about how we're trained and all this kind of stuff, because we did a 4-year apprenticeship, and one of the last known tohunga, in a traditional sense, who taught us a lot about the spirituality side of things, and it's that knowledge I think that we don't have. We don't have those people that we can go to protect ourselves spiritually.
And that mātauranga Māori has been devalued, and it can offer so much in practice.
Totally, yeah. I mean, especially in psychology spaces, it's not uplifted and kind of valued in the same way that kind of Western models are. We always talk around things like cognitive behavioral therapy, which is imported from the US and the UK. And so the context is completely different. The ways of understanding the world are very different. It is, as you said before, that individual. And so there's no conceptualization of, how can you be well if your family isn't well? Like it's always around your own problems. And in that it's the mental, it's disconnected from the body, from the spirit, from your kind of more holistic sense of self. I think it's the big difficulty. I think especially with things like whakamomori, suicide, a lot of it is around like transgression of tapu, of through things like abuse, violence, what effects that has not just on your mental health but your kind of spiritual and physical health and well-being. And I don't think many clinicians are well equipped to kind of deal with that.
I think, so, just to be clear, those models you're talking about, it's not that they don't work.
Right.
It's that there's the keyword's disconnect, isn't it? It's that it's a model which doesn't, because it's just coming from outside and not contextualizing. Would that be the right language?
Right. Yeah, definitely.
Right.
I think it can definitely work. Some Māori, really love CBT. It's very structured. You do homework. Can be a great time. But often it doesn't see people as kind of whole selves. It's kind of like we're addressing a problem, we're making a list of how we can kind of do that, and you kind of go through very structured steps. And there are some researchers that have done amazing work to kind of contextualize it somewhat, so you can kind of do CBT modifications for Māori. But we're not really at a phase where we kind of have a real clinical psychology approach that is Māori-centred and kind of focused around mātauranga Māori as kind of being the primary driver. We're getting there. It's just there aren't really the numbers of clinical psychs at the moment who are Māori or kind of have that knowledge to kind of push that kaupapa forward.
Matakite is a typical example of this. Matakite. So like, even Māori whānau don't recognise the signs of a matakite in their kids when they start to manifest.
Right.
And a clinical psychologist who's basing all of their knowledge on Western information and how they've been taught on Western models and stuff will go, yes, there's some mental problems going on there. Whereas a Māori person who understands the signs of matakite manifesting themselves say, no, leave them alone and let those... Because if Western psychologists come over the top of it, they'll oppress it and they'll push it out of him or her. But, something like if they're talking to an imaginary friend all the time and they, someone go, geez, he's gone nuts. You need to get him to a psychologist or something, a psychiatrist, get him sorted out. There's something wrong with his head. Whereas in Māori terms, that's a sign. It's a sign that people are talking to him. He can hear things, and that's starting to manifest as matakite. So I'm talking about foresight, being able to predict things and see things into the future. So you got to be careful about diagnosing Māori kids, especially who've got particular skills starting to manifest that you don't get Western models coming over the top and going, yes, there's something wrong, there's a mental problem or something, when it's not a mental problem at all. There's something in their spiritual makeup that they're able to access things that other normal people can't.
There's one book at the moment, Ko te manukai I te mātauranga. It's a great book that kind of explores one woman's story, and it has different Māori clinical psychologists and psychologists explore from a Māori perspective how we could understand the difficulties which kind of been diagnosed as depression, psychosis and things like that. They kind of don't really use those labels as such, but kind of explore things like matakite, but also intergenerational trauma, colonisation, having that broader context in which to kind of situate tangata whaiora, which is the word I like to use instead of client. Yeah, much nicer. Someone who's seeking health or well-being.
Māori we use mate hinengaro quite a bit.
Yeah.
But that always means that something's wrong with the person. So I prefer to use hauora hinengaro, which is like mental well-being rather than something. Mate is like something's wrong there. It's already got the connotation that something's wrong.
Well, it's the same with oranga tamariki. The idea behind that was that we'll talk about the well-being of the child, not the vulnerability of the child. But then you have the mismatch of the name does not fit the practice.
Not at the moment anyway.
Let me ask about spiritualization. Spiritualization, I think we've talked about in terms of the holisticness of mental health. But I want to talk about in terms of recovery and where that sits within Māoridom. I can relate to it again from a Pacific point of view with Vau, with the way that we have our own spiritualization, It's not all just Moana. But where's that sit for you guys in terms of the journey of mental health and a broader understanding?
So there's a famous model for Māori health written by Sir Mason Drew, and he talks about the whare tapawha, and so we just naturally talk about taha whānau, so our whānau, taha tinana, our physical health, taha hinengaro, mental health, and taha wairua, our spiritual health. But those two really interact so strongly that I don't know that I can actually or feel like I want to separate them in definition. Yeah. I just see it's like, because this is us and it's who we are, if we stop that, it's like a tube or something that comes down, you know, like an eardrum that's blocked. When I see our people haka and waiata, that's why I get so emotional, because I just think it's wairua Māori at its finest and showing, you know, your true self. And it's our way of moving, it's our way of, you know, those feelings of and getting goosebumps and how we move other people. You know, when people are moved to tears watching haka and waiata, I think it's because it's this spiritual experience and a vibration of feelings that you just don't, are so heightened. And another way of getting that is obviously drugs. So I think that's one of the reasons why we go, I want those feelings, and it can be dangerous for our people. Like if I can't have my spirituality and have those natural ways of accessing heightened feelings, then I want to go for the one that I can buy. Yeah. Accessing our spirituality can be in different ways, like singing together. When we have waiata and we get up and we all know the words, I can see Pākehā sometimes going, oh man, like when was the last time you sang with a whole group of adults? So to feel that unity, and especially as Māori who have had to work hard to reconnect, and suddenly to feel like, damn it, I know this one. and like I'm one of the team, you know, like that's what New Zealanders on their OE do. They go, tu te mai ngā iwi, you know, and because you feel connected, because we are a people who crave to be connected, because we come from a collective culture.
To be unique.
Again, when we talk about the effect on mental health, I can name you a whole bunch of civil rights heroes from the American struggle. Much more than I think I can name New Zealand's civil rights heroes.
Yeah, I think when I was 15, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and I just became hardcore militant. And it was my favourite book, and it was just like ripped to shreds. But I think, maybe because I didn't see those heroes in my own culture, not through any fault of the heroes themselves, but just because of the way that it is, that I sort of jumped on someone else's struggle a little bit.
But that was an active act of our history and what we were taught at school. That we Abel Tasman discovered New Zealand, even though we were already hanging out here. But it's also a Venn diagram thing of we can, as Indigenous peoples, have aroha for the struggle, and that we can relate. And I still have, I go to something like like Black Panther, and I was like beside myself. I was like, Wakanda forever. This is like Tuhoi. But I was just like, I'm so there. And because, in Avatar, that's a tino rangatiratanga story. You can relate it to so many things, and when you recognise a struggle, then you have aroha for it.
And also the argument of like, that was 200 years ago, I didn't do anything.
It doesn't do with me.
I wasn't alive. Yeah. And it's like, for you it might seem like 200 years ago, but for me it doesn't. It feels like yesterday. It feels like right now, like that pain that I feel and stuff. And I'm not asking to talk about it and for you to fix it, but just like listen and just be like, that sucks, and like how can we move forward?
There's a metaphor I've heard in the Pacific, which I think might apply here, is mixed race kids at a bridge, which sounds lovely until you realise you're the one holding up the conversation.
Yeah, it is exhausting. I was in a relationship with a Pākehā man, and we would often have disagreements around culture, and we had a massive fight one time, and the police came to our house, and it was terrible, and they split us up and sat us down. The policewoman was like, so what were you arguing about? And I was like, the treaty. She was like, sorry, what? The treaty. We're arguing. You can see what we look like.
And you go, so how does that affect our mental health? A lot. because I'm going, do I choose this argument or don't I? All of those questions and decisions. And then I guess, talking about relationships, it presents opportunity, because one thing I really appreciate about my husband is his spirituality, and that we're able to relate on that level and without talking, and that it's able, that he has access to that is, I guess, a deeper part of our connection, even though he's making faces at me right now.
It says to me, that spiritualness, the spirituality that we've been taught, the ability to be able to do karakia, and that saves me from a lot of mental health problems, I reckon.
Yeah.
Because it gives me somewhere to put everything, so I don't carry it in here or in here or in here. I'm not carrying it. I've got mechanisms to offload and put
So
it
that it doesn't come
somewhere,
out. And,
so that it doesn't weigh me down and push me into a depressive state or anything. I think, and like I said earlier, I think that's where we find a lot of our mental health problems are coming from, is that the connection with the spiritual side has been broken down over the years, and people haven't got the ability to connect with their spirituality and then look at avenues that they can use within the culture to deal with a lot of things that they have. But like when we talk about no language, no whakapapa, they've lost whakapapa, they've lost connection with tribal areas and all that kind of thing. All of that, man. I mean, how are you supposed to deal with that? That's pretty heavy stuff to be carrying.
And it's that weight, Logan, I'll check my language with you when we talk about like depression and value. It's the word that I can come back to. But also anxiety, because Stacey, I hear what you're saying, Scotty, I hear what you're saying. Courtney, I hear what you're saying, and I think when people get tired in that environment, they go, oh, I'm just not going to engage. Now suddenly you're shut off. Suddenly you're not going to take job opportunities or to events because you're like going to be the only Māori in the room, and you're like, oh, I better compartmentalize 20 minutes for the same conversation 7 times,
Yeah, I mean, burnout is a huge thing, especially for Māori, but also, any kind of marginalised community, in that you're having to invest emotional labour in conversations that others in the majority don't have to do. And so, as a future psychologist, I wanted to make sure that I had supervisors who were Māori who would be able to help guide me in that process, which I think is really important, is to know who you can talk to when you're facing difficulties, and having someone who can be, whether it's a kaumātua, an elder, whoever is having that support person, because the biggest thing is, disconnection is a huge part of mental health, is that when you feel disconnected, that is when the trouble starts. It's through engaging with other people through that connection, especially if we think around, being a collectivist culture, then, we're supposed to be connected. We're supposed to be connected, and then if you don't have your whakapapa, if you don't have your language, how are you meant to connect? How are you meant to engage with others? It becomes so much harder. And I think, when you see people face to face and you hear their stories, and not just their stories, but the stories of their whānau, that they also have to carry, I think it is very hard. You have to work with so many layers, and there is that wairua, that spiritual element alongside that. And that's why, that it can't just be a clinical psychologist. There has to be a broader approach to kind of engaging with Māori health and wellbeing that includes that kind of cultural element, not just this is CBT, this is how we go through it.
Yeah, it's where rongoa comes in, different methods of healing. Like we have karamu at our door, and that part of that is about warding off bad energy that we know gets sent our way, and that kind of thing. And then looking at the tohu, looking at things like manu will tell you what's going on as well. It's like, oh, where's that tui? Oh, I have 5 today. Okay, what do we need to talk about? That kind of stuff. So all of those things that can be part of our self-care and our understanding and interpretation, te whakamāoritanga o te ao. Yeah.
I think that helps break down the stigma of looking for help too, if you put it in a way that you can understand it, and not just going, I'm crazy or I'm mental. You putting it in a proper context for Māori people, where we go, this is what it is, and this is that comes with it. So it breaks that thing of going, I need to find help, and just put it in a gentle way that goes, this might help you with this little practice.
I think in our culture, in a traditional sense, at pre-European times, I think we had all of the mechanisms in our culture to deal with
depression, mental health, all of these kind of things. We had whakamomori, there's evidence of suicide in our traditional narratives and stuff, and some of our more teatea, our chants that were composed, centuries ago. There are instances of whakamomori in them, but my understanding is it wasn't a widespread thing, and sometimes it was done to mana enhance, sometimes. Just depends what the situation was. But then if we fast forward now, all of those mechanisms have been broken down so much that we don't have them anymore. We don't know where to go. We go to things that are foreign to us, really, to try and deal with it. And then it starts to impact on other cultures, because we had quite a major instance of suicide at our workplace, and the people there were just totally, didn't have anywhere, didn't know how to deal with it, had nothing. There was no mechanism, no nothing. They got counsellors into the building and all that kind of stuff to try and help people through it, but they were so traumatised and they didn't know what to do. So we just put a thing out, said we're going to do a pure on this fella's workspace. We're going to clear it all away, and we're going to do a blessing on everybody who wants to come. And if you want to come to it. It's at 9 o'clock tomorrow. Just about the whole workplace turned up, and this is like hundreds, a couple of hundred people turned up, crowded into this room, and we did this purification thing, and did a sending of his wairua all at the same time. Did a cleansing of everybody that was there, and they were just sort of blunt. They had tears in their eyes. The CEO, all of a sudden, he just transformed them totally. The whole experience transformed the whole building, just because of that one event. And it was because in terms of what they were experiencing, the trauma they were going through, they didn't know where to put it. And what our culture did on that day was it gave them a place to put all their trauma, all of their sorrow, their grief, and all that kind of stuff. It gave them somewhere to put that, and it gave them some kind of purification thing to say it's okay. We've sent him. We've told him where he needs to go. He'll be okay. You'll be okay.
Is being a New Zealander to have access to Māori culture? If you are a New Zealander, I always say that Māori culture is a gift for New Zealanders, from tūtera maina iwi to being able to appreciate the haka.
Everybody thought that way.
But that's the crux of it.
Māori culture is Māori culture, and all of New Zealand can participate. Yeah, it is important to stay distinct and not to go...
Don't cherry pick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't just go, good. No, we don't want that.
Yeah.
And be mindful of that. It's like with anyone. And I actually think if we invest more in Pākehā, feeling good about Pākehā culture, that will be helpful. Because the more you respect and are happy about your uniqueness, the more you can engage with other people who are different. So it's just like any marriage, if you're going to just have one partner in the marriage getting to tell the other one what's okay, it's not going to be a happy marriage. And we're stuck in this marriage. We can't go anywhere.
We can't divorce.
No. I'll divorce myself.
One thing I always do at the end of the podcast is I ask anyone if there's anything they want to share in the shower. Which I will now throw out to you guys. Is there anything, maybe we'll start with you, Courtney, and just go around. Is there anything you guys would like to share at the table before we stop recording and just get back to eating?
I just want to share my gratitude for this conversation. It's been really lovely. I feel like I've learnt lots. I feel like I've been able to get some things off my chest as well. So thank you all very much for having me.
Yeah. E tautoko anau I ngā korero a taku tuahine nei. Te pai hoki o te noho tahi ki te whakawhiti whakaaro. E pāna ki tēnei kaupapa hohonu, te hauora he ngaro. Me taku miharo kia koutou. Me a koutou korero tai atu kia koe e te rangatira o te kaupapa nei he mihi ana kia koe.
Tēnā koe, tēnā koutou. I've had a great time. It's really interesting hearing everyone's whakaaro on this issue and realising that there's so much more to say about it. So yeah, thanks. Beautiful korero.
Yeah. E rere aku mihi ki a koutou katoa. Ai, tautoko what everyone said. Yeah, I feel really privileged to have had this conversation. To anyone who's listening, please come learn about our traditions, our ways of being. I was at a talk by Leonie Pihame, and she says, he rongoa te reo, he rongoa te tūkiri Māori. So it's learning the language, being familiar with the culture is part of healing. It's healing for us. But she also says to tread lightly and to be gentle when you're encroaching on other spaces. So I think those are two things that I would send out to everyone.
Tēnei ka mihi kia tātou katoa. And to tautoko, you were saying, I think for the people who are listening, and if you feel at all disconnected, know that we are with you. We are you and you are us. And your struggles are our struggles. Kei konei tō ahurea Māori, tō wairua Māori, ki te hāpai, ki te hiki tō wairua. Kaua e maharahara, ka kore koe ngaro. You will not be lost because you are one of us.
And I'll just say, as the Pākehā of the table, one of the lovely things about having you all here is occasionally when you drop into reo, I can understand a couple of words because that's the unhidden truth we don't talk about in New Zealand, which is we all know a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
It's in there.
Oh, it's in the Samoan connection, yes.
Yeah, it's that Samoan connection. It's an interesting one because I am Pākehā. That is correct. Yeah, because people sometimes go, well, you're Māori and Pacifica, and I'm like, no, you're thinking of the stats, the word itself. So for anyone listening who is going, oh, I'm Pākehā, well, so am I, and let me tell you, you want to get to the table because the chicken is good.
Well, speaking of the chicken, and because, we're doing tikanga Māori and stuff, we usually to pay homage and acknowledgement to the person who's provided the food for us, we do a bit of a waiata, so e mihi ana ki... Tā tātou ringa wera, nāna nei tēnei kai rekara wātu.
Jared, kei hea koe, Jared, kei hea koe.
Kai mā tātou, ko tāte ihu, ko puta pito, ko rongo ngā o te waha I te reka o te kai nei no reira. Jared, aha koa kare koe I konei?
Jared? He's left the kitchen.
Never mind, we're going to do a waiata to...
You went to the toilet down the road.
We give him a waiata anyway. Tell him we sang him a song. Hey. Tūtira mai ngā iwi.
Ue.
Tātou, tātou e.
Karangati taha.
Tūtira mai ngā iwi. Tātou, tātou e. Whai a te maramatanga. Me te aroha e ngā iwi, kia takatahi, kia kotahira, tātou, tātou e, tātou, hui, tātou, tātou e, hiru atoru hio e hi. That's for our ringawera, that's for Jared. Beautiful food.
Eating Fried Chicken in the Shower was produced by Charlie Bleakley and presented by me, James Nokise. The engineer is Blair Stagpool. The executive producers are Justin Gregory and Tim Watkin. Subscribe to our podcast however you just found this podcast. Or if you're listening on the radio, go to RNZ's podcast page and look for the chicken. And when you're rating us, only give us 5 stars. Remember, more stars, more chicken. If you want to share your safe space or comfort food, tweet me at James Nokise. If you need support, text 1737. Or for more resources on mental health, check the Fried Chicken webpage on the RNZ website. Whaktailava Matewa.
Here at RNZ, we want to continue to deliver independent, high-quality content for all New Zealanders, and we're keen to hear from you. So we've set up a new research community called Your Media Matters. It's a place where you can share your views about program or content ideas, podcasts and topical issues. We'd love you to join. To sign up, head to rnz.co.nz/yourmediamatters.